Welcome to the Funeral Channel Network podcast.
Thanks. It's really good to be here today.
Okay, so let's unpack this. Usually on the deep dive, we're tearing into, a best-selling nonfiction book or maybe some complex piece of geopolitical research
Right.
or some tech trend that's going to change the world. But today we're looking at a single document, a piece of paper, usually folded in half, sometimes in thirds.
Yeah, a document that I'd bet almost every single person listening to us right now
Yeah.
has held in their hands at some point.
Exactly. We've held it, we've, crumpled it in our pockets, we've maybe even used it to dry a tear. But I seriously doubt many of us have actually looked at it critically.
Oh, absolutely not.
We're talking about the funeral order of service. And I have to be honest with you, when I first saw this topic on the slate, I thought, really, we're going to spend a whole deep dive talking about a schedule.
Well, I mean, it's a completely fair reaction. On the surface, it really does just look like a logistical throwaway.
Yeah.
You look at it to see when you could leave, and then you toss it in the recycling bin. Or at least that's what we think we do.
But looking at the source material we have today, specifically, this piece called A Roadmap for Remembrance, it seems like I've been dead wrong about that. This isn't just a piece of stationery, is it?
Not even close.
Yeah.
If you really analyze it, and that is exactly the mission of our deep dive today, you realize it's a highly sophisticated psychological tool.
A psychological tool?
Yes, it's an emotional anchor.
Yep.
It is essentially a piece of user interface designed for one of the absolute worst days of your life.
Wow. Okay, that is a heavy claim. User interface designed for grief.
Think about it. A funeral is, by definition, a moment of rupture. Normal life has stopped. The rules of engagement have completely changed.
Right.
You walk into that room, and the air is just different. The gravity is different. And this piece of paper is often the only thing that tells you how to navigate that alien space.
So the mission for us today is to figure out the why behind the paper. We aren't just critiquing fonts and layouts here. We want to know why we need this thing. Is it just so I know when to stand up and sit down? Or is there something deeper happening in the brain when we're handed that program at the door?
It is definitely deeper. And to understand it, we actually have to start with the brain. We have to start with what happens to a human being physiologically when they're grieving.
Okay.
Because if you don't understand the physiology of grief, the order of service just looks like a list. But once you understand the biology, it looks like a life raft.
Let's dig into that biology then, because a roadmap for remembrance makes a really specific distinction right off the bat. It says this isn't just a general funeral program, it's an order of service.
Yes.
Is that just semantics? Like, is that just fancy funeral director speak?
No, the distinction is highly functional. A program could be anything, really. A brochure with a nice poem and a photo is a program. A bookmark is a program. But an order of service is a timeline. It is a strict sequence of events. And the reason that distinction matters so much is because of what is happening in the mourner's mind.
Okay, paint the picture for me and the listener. Let's say I'm walking into the funeral home. I've just lost my uncle. What is physically happening in my brain?
Chaos. Absolute chemical chaos.
I've felt that. It's like a thick fog.
It is a fog. But let's get specific about the chemistry. When you are in a state of acute grief or shock, your body is flooded with cortisol.
The stress hormone.
Exactly. You are in a fight or flight state or perhaps a freeze state. This creates a massive, massive drain on your cognitive resources. Specifically, it heavily impacts your executive function.
And executive function being the part of my brain that organizes, plans, and, remembers where I put my keys.
Precisely. Your prefrontal cortex, the CEO of your brain, is effectively taken offline.
Yeah.
It is being hijacked by the emotional centers. So you walk into this space and simple things become incredibly difficult. You might forget people's names. You might forget where you parked your car. You might feel a profound sense of time dilation where minutes feel like hours.
So I'm walking in there operating on lizard brain, basically.
You are. And that is a terrifying feeling for a human being. We rely on our executive function to feel in control of our surroundings. When that slips away, we feel completely unmoored. We feel unsafe.
And this is where the piece of paper comes in.
This is exactly where the paper comes in. There is a concept in psychology called cognitive offloading.
Cognitive offloading. Okay, break that down for us.
It's the idea that we use physical actions or external objects to reduce the cognitive demand on our brains. If you read a grocery list, you are offloading the memory task to the paper so your brain doesn't have to constantly hold on to it.
Okay, yeah, that makes perfect sense.
The order of service is the ultimate tool for cognitive offloading during grief. It is an external hard drive for your executive function.
An external hard drive.
Yes. It essentially says to your struggling brain, you don't have to worry about what happens next. You don't have to worry about how long this will take. You don't have to worry about who is speaking. I am holding that information for you.
So it frees up my brain to do what exactly?
To feel, to mourn.
Ah,
If your brain is frantically trying to figure out the logistics,
ah.
am I in the wrong seat? Is this almost over? Who is that guy at the microphone?
You cannot be present emotionally. Anxiety competes directly with grief. And usually, anxiety wins.
That is fascinating. So if I'm anxious about the logistics, I literally cannot process my sadness.
It blocks the deeper processing, yes. You stay on the surface in that high alert, panicked state. The order of service acts as what the source calls a silent assistant. It whispers to you, I've got the plan. You just breathe.
I really love that phrase from the source material. Structure becomes grounding. I thought it was just a poetic sentiment when I first read it, but you're saying it's actually a neurological necessity. It is the difference between free-falling and abseiling. You are still going down into the darkness of grief, absolutely, but you have a rope. You have equipment.
It's funny, I've always thought of the program as something for the audience, for the guests. But the source mentions it's huge for the family, too, the ones sitting in the very front row.
Oh, arguably, it's more important for them.
Duh.
Think about the immense pressure on the family. They are the hosts of this terrible party. They feel responsible for everyone else in that room.
Right. Is Grandma okay? Is the microphone working? Is it too hot in here?
Exactly. For them, the order of service is the script. It is the contract they have made with the room. It reassures them that things will move forward even if they themselves fall apart.
Wow, yeah.
If the eulogy goes too long or if someone breaks down and can't finish a reading, the document is the rigid backbone that keeps the entire ceremony upright.
It's the safety net.
It really is. Without it, the ambiguity would be unbearable for the family.
So, we've established that my brain is essentially broken by grief, and this paper is my crutch. Now let's actually open the document. Let's look at the anatomy of the service itself. Because even though every funeral is different, the source material argues there is a familiar structure that we all kind of subconsciously expect to see.
It's a narrative arc. It's storytelling.
It starts with the beginning. The welcome. Why do we need to list welcome on the paper? We know we're being welcomed.
Remember, we are in the fog. The welcome, or the opening words, is a vital threshold moment. Whether it's a priest, a celebrant, or a family member, that first person speaking is doing something very specific. They are acknowledging the reality of why we are there.
Bursting the bubble, so to speak.
In a way, they are stating the purpose. We are here because this person has died. It creates a container for the experience. The source talks about creating a shared emotional space.
Right, because until that exact moment, you're just a bunch of disjointed individuals. You've got the work friends, the gym buddies, the estranged cousins.
And everyone is in a totally different headspace. The work friends might be checking their watches, the cousins are crying, the welcome synchronizes the room. And seeing that name on the paper, welcome by John Doe, it anchors trust. It tells the audience, this person is in charge? You can relax now.
And then usually we move right into the opening prayer or reflection.
This is the transition. It's the airlock. We're officially moving from the mundane world, the traffic, the parking lot, the weather, into the sacred time of the ceremony.
Then we hit the middle, the core of the event. And here is where it gets really interesting to me, specifically regarding the printed program. Music. The source makes a huge point about music allowing emotion when words fall short.
It's a physiological response again. Music bypasses the logical brain, the parts that are already struggling to process speech, and goes straight to the limbic system, the emotional center.
Yeah.
You can hold it together during a speech. You can bite your lip and stay stoic while someone talks. But the opening notes of a specific hymn or a song that smells like their childhood, that is almost always when the dam breaks.
But here's my question for you. If the music is there to make me feel, why do I need to read the title in the program? Why not just let the music hit me?
Context. Context is absolutely everything. If I just hear a song play, I might think, oh, that's a nice tune. But if I look down at the program in my hand and it says, Danny Boy, his mother's favorite song, suddenly that piece of music has a completely different weight.
It changes how I listen to it.
It completely frames the listening experience. And the source brings up a detail I find particularly fascinating. The program should specify if the music is live or recorded.
Yeah, I saw that. Why does that matter? A song is a song.
It manages expectations. If I see Amazing Grace performed by Granddaughter, what am I preparing for?
Probably something shaky, maybe some tears, a bit vulnerable.
Exactly. You're preparing your empathy.
Yeah.
You are ready to support her emotionally from your seat. You're ready for imperfections and raw emotion. But if I see Amazing Grace recording, I am expecting the professional, polished version. I am preparing for nostalgia, not tension. The text on the paper presets my emotional reaction before a single note is even played.
That is wide. I never thought about it that way. It's literally like a stage direction for the audience's feelings.
It is exactly that.
And then we have the readings in Scripture. The source says we should list these to help guests follow along. But be honest, does anyone actually open a Bible at a modern funeral?
Maybe not physically opening a book, but printing the text, or at least the specific reference in the program, is another profound form of cognitive offloading. Listening is hard work, especially when you're profoundly sad. Words just float away.
Yeah, I'm sorry for your loss. He's in a better place. It all just becomes white noise after a while.
Exactly. But if the text is right there in my hand, I can engage two senses simultaneously, sight and sound. It anchors the meaning. It helps the actual message penetrate that fog we talked about earlier.
Then comes the big one, the danger zone, the eulogy.
The emotional centerpiece of the whole day, and yes, absolutely the danger zone.
The source mentions that listing the speaker's name prevents surprise or confusion, but I feel like it does way more than that. It prevents dread.
The dread of the open mics.
Yes, we have all been there. The service where the priest or the celebrant says, "Does anyone else want to say a few words?" And your stomach just drops to the floor.
Because you know exactly what's coming. The story that goes way too long, the highly inappropriate joke, the crying that doesn't stop and makes everyone uncomfortable.
Exactly. So how does the printed order of service fix that anxiety?
It acts as a firm social contract. By listing eulogy by David, and literally nothing else, it signals to the entire room that this is a curated experience. We have chosen the speakers. It tells the audience there's a boundary.
It's crowd control.
It is very polite crowd control. It reassures the audience that they are in safe hands. They don't have to sit there worrying about the rogue eulogizer taking over the service.
Well, what if the family actually wants that sharing? The source talks about sharing time or open reflections.
Then the program is even more critical. If open reflections printed in black and white, it gives the audience permission to mentally prepare. They can think about what they want to say. They know it's coming, so there's no ambush.
Right, instead of being put on the spot.
Right. And conversely, if it is not in the program, it is a polite but incredibly firm sign. Please stay seated. It saves people from the deep embarrassment of standing up when they aren't supposed to. It is etiquette guidance without anyone having to explicitly say, please sit down.
It's amazing how much of this document is really just about avoiding awkwardness.
Awkwardness is a form of social pain. And there is more than enough pain in that room already. The goal of the order of service is to minimize any unnecessary suffering.
So we get through the eulogy, we get through the stories and the tears, and we reach the conclusion. Closing words, benediction, and then the committal.
The pivot.
The pivot.
The service is almost entirely about the past, the life that it was lived. The committal or the closing instructions are about the immediate future. What do we do right now?
Right. The logistical reality hits us again. We have to physically move.
The program becomes an instruction manual once again, graveside service to follow. Or reception at the family home. It gently guides people out of that suspended emotional bubble and back into the harsh physical world. It tells you how to leave.
And that how to leave a part is always tricky. I always feel weird leaving a funeral. Like, am I allowed to go have a sandwich now? Is that disrespectful?
The program gives you explicit permission. Reception to follow. It says, yes, go eat. Life continues. You are allowed to re-enter the world of the living.
I want to switch gears a bit here because we've been talking about the structure very broadly, but the source material, a roadmap for remembrance, dives deep into how this exact structure changes based on who you are, the cultural variations.
The user interface of faith, if you will.
I love that phrase, the UI of the afterlife.
Well, it's remarkably true. Different faiths have completely different operating systems for processing death. They have different ultimate goals. And the order of service has to adapt to run efficiently on those specific systems.
Let's start with the big one in the West, Christian and specifically Catholic services. The source says the need for a printed guide is much higher here. Why is that?
It comes down to what sociologists call high context versus low context cultures. A Catholic Mass is an incredibly high context event. It is heavily ritualized. It has a script that has been written and refined for centuries.
The liturgy.
Right. Now, if you are a practicing Catholic, you know the script by heart. You know when to stand, when to sit, when to kneel, when to cross yourself, and when to say, and with your spirit, it's pure muscle memory.
But if you're not,
If you are the coworker, the neighbor, the son-in-law who grew up entirely secular, you are lost.
Mm.
You're absolutely terrified of offending someone. You are constantly watching everyone else out of the corner of your eye trying to mimic them a half second later.
I have absolutely been that person. I'm sitting there sweating, thinking, why is everyone kneeling? Do I kneel? Is it disrespectful if I don't kneel?
And that profound anxiety takes you completely out of the moment. You aren't mourning, you're surviving. So in a Catholic funeral, the order of service is a crucial hospitality tool. It bridges the gap, it outlines the rites, it explains the postures, and crucially, it explains communion.
The source mentions communion specifically.
It has to, because communion is exclusive in the Catholic faith. The program needs to gently explain. If you are not Catholic, you're welcome to come forward for a blessing. But please cross your arms over your chest.
It saves the guest from a very public, very awkward rejection at the altar.
Exactly. It translates the ancient ritual so the outsider can participate safely and without fear.
Now compare that to the Jewish tradition. The source says Jewish services focus heavily on simplicity.
The theological goal is different. In Catholicism, there is a heavy focus on the soul of the deceased, praying for their safe passage. In Judaism, particularly at the funeral service itself, the focus shifts heavily to kavod hamet, honoring the dead and comforting the living mourners.
So does the program look tangibly different?
Often, yes. It is much less of an instruction manual for physical movement. There is less synchronized kneeling and standing, and more of a guide for verbal participation. The prayers, the psalms.
The good
Psalm Warner's Kaddish is absolutely central. And it is a communal prayer. It is highly rhythmic. For a non-Hebrew speaker attending a Jewish funeral, having a program with a transliteration, the English phonetics written out, is a lifeline.
It lets you join the literal voice of the room.
Yes. You aren't just passively watching a performance. You are vibrating with the community. And often, the Jewish service is much shorter. The burial happens very quickly, sometimes within 24 hours of death. So the program is often simpler, more urgent. It's not a 12-page glossy booklet. It's a focused guide to the sacred task at hand, burying the dead and beginning Shiva.
And what about the Islamic tradition? The source mentions that briefly.
It is similar in its focus on brevity and very specific custom. The janazah prayer is highly specific. And for a non-Muslim guest, it can be quite confusing. It looks very different than the standard daily prayers. There is no bowing or prostrating during the funeral prayer.
So the program educates them on that.
It prevents the well-meaning guest from doing the wrong thing out of a sincere desire to be respectful. It is here we remain standing. We pray for mercy. It simplifies what looks complex to an outsider.
Then we have the big cultural shift we're seeing lately, the secular pivot, the celebration of life.
This is where the order of service actually has to work the hardest.
Really, I would have thought it would be so much easier. No rules, no ancient liturgy to follow.
But no rules means no net. If you walk into a traditional Catholic church, you know roughly what's going to happen. The architecture of the walls themselves tells you how to behave. If you walk into a celebration of life at a local golf course, or a community center, or somebody's backyard, anything could happen.
That's very true. It could be a solemn toast. It could be a loud jazz band. It could be a 30-minute slideshow. It could be a guided yoga session.
Exactly. The ambiguity is sky high. And remember our earlier point, ambiguity creates massive anxiety. So the order of service becomes the only structure in the room. It has to create the ritual entirely from scratch.
It essentially has to invent the liturgy for that specific day.
Precisely. The source talks about personalization here. Because you don't have the Book of Common Prayer to fall back on, the program must reflect the unique personality of the deceased.
So instead of first reading from Corinthians, it might say Bob's favorite fishing stories.
Or Toast to Mom. The language completely changes. It becomes highly conversational. But, and this is key to the source's argument, it still desperately needs that timeline. The source emphasizes that even in a highly informal, party-like atmosphere, people need to know the flow. When do we eat? When is the slideshow? Is there a designated bathroom break?
It's almost more important because the subtle social cues just aren't there.
Correct. Without the printed program, a celebration of life can very easily devolve into just a confusing, awkward party where everyone happens to be sad. The order of service is the tool that turns it back into a meaningful ceremony.
That brings us to the actual physical thing itself, the design.
Right.
We are holding this paper in our hands. And I feel like design often gets entirely overlooked. We just pick a template online and hit print.
Which is a tragic mistake, because design, in this context, is accessibility.
The source brings this up specifically. Design as accessibility. Explain that connection for our listeners.
Think about the demographic at a typical funeral service. Who is sitting in those pews?
Family, friends, usually they skew older.
Statistically, yes. If the deceased is 85 years old, a very large portion of the audience is also 85.
So we're talking hearing aids, walkers, and reading glasses.
Cataracts, macular degeneration, general low vision. Now imagine a well-meaning 20-something grandchild designs the program. They want it to look moody and elegant. So they choose a dark navy background, and they put all the text in a thin, gold, swirling script font. Size 9.
Oh no, it can picture it perfectly.
It looks absolutely beautiful on a backlit Retina computer screen, but print that out and hand it to an 85-year-old woman sitting in a dimly lit funeral chapel.
She can't read a single word of it.
She is effectively locked out of the service. She can't follow the prayers. She can't read the lyrics to the hymn. She feels profoundly isolated in a moment when she needs connection most.
It's a massive accessibility failure.
It is. The source strongly emphasizes that typography must prioritize readability over aesthetics. High contrast, large fonts, sans serif typefaces that are clean and legible. It's not just about making it look pretty, it's about deep empathy.
Practical empathy. I really like that concept. You aren't just making it pretty, you are making it usable for the vulnerable people who need it most.
Exactly. That is the core of good design.
The source mentions the funeral program site as a resource for professional templates. I guess that helps families who aren't trained graphic designers avoid these exact traps.
It does, because, again, we go back to cognitive load.
Yeah.
When you are deeply grieving, you should not be fighting with paragraph margins in Microsoft Word. You shouldn't be trying to figure out font kerning. Professional templates act as another form of structural support. They handle the how, so you can focus entirely on the what.
Now, we live in a hyper-digital world. Why are we still printing these on paper? Why not just email a PDF to everyone the night before, or put a giant QR code on the chapel door and say, scan for service?
The paper versus pixel debate. The source is very clear on this point, and from a psychological standpoint, I agree with it 100%. The tangible physical object deeply matters.
But isn't that just nostalgia? Isn't that just us clinging to old-fashioned ways?
No, it is actually physiological. We physically need something to hold.
It's an object concept.
Yes. When you are highly anxious, when your nervous system is completely revving in overdrive, your hands desperately want to do something. Psychologists call it self-soothing or grounding. You hold the paper, you smooth out the wrinkles with your thumb, you fold the corner over and over, you roll it into a tight tube.
I do the tube thing. I sit there and roll it up tight and then unroll it the whole service.
That is your body unconsciously trying to regulate its stress levels. A smartphone does not give you that tactile release.
Yeah.
A phone is just a cold slab of glass. Paper has texture. Paper has physical weight. It bends to your grip.
Plus, let's be honest, looking at your phone during a funeral.
It sends the completely wrong social signal. Even if you were genuinely reading the hymn lyrics from a PDF, it looks to everyone else like you were checking Instagram. It looks like you were completely disengaged from the community. Holding a paper program is a universally accepted, visible signal of participation.
It visually shows the family you were in the room with them.
Right. However, the source does importantly acknowledge the digital shift. We absolutely cannot ignore it.
Yeah, you mentioned QR codes. I've definitely seen them pop up at recent services.
It's a growing modern trend, and it has incredible utility when used correctly. You might have a beautifully printed program for the physical service, but on the back cover, there's a QR code.
And where does that take you?
Places the paper simply cannot go. A digital guest book where you can type out a long, detailed story about the deceased. A photo gallery with 500 high-resolution pictures that would cost a fortune to print in a booklet. Or, and this is the biggest shift, the hybrid approach.
For the Zoom attendees, the live stream crowd.
Exactly. The cousin in Australia who can't afford to fly in.
Yeah.
If you have a digital version of the exact same program available, they can download it. They can hold it even if it's just on an iPad while they watch the live stream.
It makes them feel like they're an active part of the ritual, not just passively watching a sad TV show.
It extends the physical circle of community across the globe. It's radically inclusive.
The source also mentions sustainability. Minimal designs.
People are increasingly conscious of environmental waste. We don't want to print 500 glossy, multi-page booklets that mostly get thrown away. So maybe the modern approach is a single recycled card, a rack card style, but the psychological function remains exactly the same. It is the anchor.
Let's move to the final stage of this document's life cycle, Section 5 of the source, the afterlife of the document. Because unlike a wedding invitation or a generic birthday card, these things tend to stick around for a very long time.
This is the part of the research that touches me the most, honestly. The keepsake factor.
I have a shoebox. It's sitting in the top of my closet. It has programs from funerals going back 20 years. High school friends, grandparents. Why do I keep them? I never actually look at them.
Don't you? You might not pull them out and read the hymns, but you know they are up there.
That's true. I feel their presence.
The source calls it a tangible record. We happily throw away the glossy playbill from the theater. We recycle the expensive conference agenda. But the funeral program, throwing it away feels distinctly like throwing away a piece of the person.
It feels like actively erasing them.
Exactly. It transitions from a functional schedule into a sacred relic. It is physical proof. It is proof that this person lived a life. But crucially, it is proof that they were loved.
The source calls it a memory trigger.
Think about what actually happens when you open that shoebox in 10 years. You pull out the program. You see the printed list of pallbearers. Oh, wow, you think Uncle Jim was a pallbearer. His knees were terrible. He could barely walk, but he did it anyway. You see who sang the solo.
It reminds you of the team that assembled that day.
It reminds you of the specific community. It reminds you that on the absolute worst day of your life, the room was completely full. People stopped their lives and showed up. It is a permanent record of support. We were not alone. That is an incredibly powerful thing to hold in your hand a decade later.
It's physical evidence of love.
It is. And there is one more vital layer to this afterlife concept. The creation process itself.
Right. The source discusses grief processing as it relates to making the document.
Yes. We spent a lot of time talking about the audience's experience, but let's go back to the family one last time. The week before the funeral is a total blur. You are in deep shock. You feel entirely helpless. You cannot fix the death. The person is gone.
There is literally nothing you can do to change it.
But the program is something you can do.
It's a tangible task.
It is a concrete, highly creative task. You have to pick the cover photo. You have to dig through the dusty old albums to find the one where they look genuinely happy. You have to debate and choose the scripture. You have to decide on the font and the layout.
It gives you a sense of agency when you feel powerless.
It gives you a structured way to channel your overwhelming love into direct action. I am doing this for them. I am making sure they look good to the world. I am making sure their story is told right.
It's a final, desperate act of caretaking.
It is. It transforms the raw, chaotic grief into a curated artifact. And that process, sitting at the kitchen table at 2 in the morning, arguing with your sister over which Mary Oliver poem to use, crying over the baby photos, that is the actual beginning of healing, that is the beginning of processing the horrific reality.
It forces you to look at the life as a complete whole, rather than just focusing on the end.
Yes. You are literally summarizing an entire human life on 4 folded pages of paper. It is a profoundly difficult and important exercise.
Wow. I am honestly never going to look at one of these things the same way again. It's not just a list of hymns and a nice picture.
It's a very heavy piece of paper.
So let's wrap this up. We've gone from a simple folded sheet of cardstock to a neurological crutch, to a cultural translator, to a user interface for grief, and finally to a historical artifact of a human life.
It really is a remarkable little document when you peel back the layers.
It provides clarity in chaos and comfort in sorrow. That's the core value the source keeps returning to.
If I can just add one final big picture reflection here.
Please go ahead.
The source material heavily emphasizes accuracy. Checking the dates multiple times, spelling the names exactly right, proofreading until your eyes bleed. It seems like such a small, almost pedantic detail to worry about when someone has just died. Who cares if there's a typo in the middle name?
But it matters.
It matters immensely. Because ultimately, clarity is kindness.
Clarity is kindness. I really like that.
When the mourner's world is completely falling apart, getting the name right, getting the birth date right, it is a fundamental act of respect. It tells the story correctly for history. It says, this life mattered enough to be chronicled with absolute precision. The order of service is a final act of respect. It's the family saying, we loved you enough to get the details right.
That is genuinely beautiful, and it leads us perfectly to our final thought for the listener. At the end of every deep dive, we always like to leave you with something to mull over on your own time.
And this topic brings up a very provocative question.
We plan everything in our lives, don't we?
We do. We plan our weddings down to the specific shade of the napkin color. We meticulously plan our retirements. We plan our summer vacations months in advance. But we rarely, if ever, plan our own order of service.
It feels taboo. For a lot of people, it feels incredibly morbid.
It feels like inviting bad luck into the house.
Yeah.
But if you accept the core premise of this deep dive, that the order of service is a vital psychological tool to help your family survive the worst day of their lives, then planning it isn't morbid at all. It's a profound gift.
It's the ultimate act of cognitive offloading for the people you love.
Exactly. You are taking that agonizing burden off their plate while they are in shock.
Yeah.
So the question to the listener is this. If your entire life was reduced to a structured, one-hour sequence of events, your own personal roadmap for remembrance, what would it look like?
What's on the playlist?
What is the specific music that makes people feel who you truly were? What are the readings or the quotes that explain your philosophy? What exact instructions do you want to leave them to help them get through that impossible hour?
It's not about being a control freak from the grave. It's about being that silent assistant for your family one last time.
Ideally, yes.
Yeah.
It's about leaving a light on for them in the dark.
Well, I definitely know what I'm doing this weekend. I'm making a playlist.
Good. I highly recommend it.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the funeral order of service. If you're listening, we hope you took something valuable away today. We'll see you next time.
Take care.